Call the first session, Isabella County Board of Commissioners, so. If the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Here.
Commissioner Embry,
Here.
Commissioner Delzinski,
Here.
Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Commissioner Swaney,
Here.
Commissioner Holt.
Here.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Up next will be approval of the agenda. We'll start with general comments and then a presentation from County Administrator Controller. We have no appointments to boards and commissions, committee reports, Finance Administration Committee.
Finance Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
The Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Human Resources and Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chair.
Very good. We have an intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business under new business. We will consider scheduling, a goal setting meeting. And then item B will enter into a closed session under section 8E of the Open Meetings Act to discuss insulin pricing litigation. And then we'll have general public comment again, and then announcements, and then adjournment. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Marino.
So been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good. We have an agenda. That brings us down to general public comment. For general public comment. Seeing no one for general public comment. Is there anyone?
There's people online. I think they're all part of the meeting, but you might want to ask them if they want to.
Okay, anyone online?
I see no one.
Okay. Then we will move right along to Isabella County Administrator Controller report, and Ms. Frost is joining us via Zoom today.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for accommodating me on Zoom today, especially Melissa on such short notice. I appreciate it. So of course, no report right now could be complete without talking about February 27th. And I feel like the counties were kind of anxiously awaiting, right? Such a critical vote coming up next Tuesday. But we are forging forward in many aspects of county government. If you weren't aware, you'll probably hear in just a moment from our project manager, our senior project manager, Heidi Hitz-Kindle. But the Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility project is now at the 50% completion mark, and that's a pretty big accomplishment. I want to be clear, a lot of buzz about the project lately, but I do want to be clear that we do remain within budget, and we still have $1 million left on the table in buyout and contingency combined. So you'll probably hear a little bit about that under the finance change order item. We had today our meeting with Amy Sell. They're the consultant working on the wage study ongoing, and we had our 60% status meeting today, 60% complete with that project, and it sounds like still on track to roll this out in April. We talked today about scheduling time with the department heads and elected officials, probably at that April 18th department meeting that's already scheduled with them, to roll out the preliminary results before anything would go beyond. Remember, that was kind of a concern in the last wage study that we didn't close the loop in that regard. So we'll be making sure to circle back with departments before information goes further. The abatement contractors are really moving along on the county administration building. Third floor is complete and second floor is well underway. As you know, the county's engaged now with an architect and engineer firm with Spicer Group. And I'm thrilled that they are now working with the abatement contractor on so many of these issues. Admin's been working with departments, department heads, elected officials, and recognize, please, that this is a tough time for us right now. You know, why we're having these conversations and working on a plan B. Should our millage request not be successful, those conversations around the numbers and the dollars, are tough, coupled with, we have some hopeful conversations about wants and needs, you know, when it comes to, everything that comes with the rebuilding. Our partners, our community partners have been so welcoming, I feel like, to give us an audience or to ask for us to come and tell our story. And the education that's occurring throughout the county, I think, is very uplifting. Tomorrow night, Council of Governments, 7 o'clock at the Isabella Township Hall in Rosebush. So I hope you will join us there. I want to end on a very, very happy note and announce the retirement of Miss Kathy Campbell. Her name probably rings a bell. She worked for 39 years for us at our Commission on Aging, and she retired at the end of January. So I just wanted to take a moment to wish her well in her retirement and a collective appreciation from all of us for dedicating so much of her life to serving with us at Isabella County. Are there any questions for me?
Mr. Amber.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
just like make a very general comment and getting out and speaking to everybody about the millage and everything. And you said that you go to Plan B, but actually, I think the millage is like Plan B, Plan C. We looked at cuts first, and I've been explaining that to people that the millage was not our first plan. And, but I've had a couple of people ask me about that, said, well, no, that's not what we looked at first. We looked at the cuts and the traffic of them. And then we thought we ought to go to the voters to find out their decisions on this. So actually, I was considering Plan C, because we looked at several other options at the time. I just wanted to clarify that, because it seemed like that's one of the questions that I get asked a lot.
Mhm. Thank you, Commissioner. That's a much better message.
Mr. Amber.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to point out, did sit in on the Amy Cell 60% meeting today. I want to express my appreciation to all the department heads and the elected officials for their involvement and their cooperation. I think it is essential moving forward that we have a very objective base for all of our positions within Isabella County to help us make decisions moving forward. So again, I thank you for all of your time and your effort to create the most comprehensive wage and job study that we can. So again, thank you to all of you.
Any other questions? Nope, seeing none. Administrator Controller Frost, thank you.
Feel better?
And we will move right along to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item is consider ratifying and placing on file the February 2nd, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $570,414.49. February 9th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $1,484,735.68. And the adjustment list dated February 15, 2024. So go to the first list, February 2nd. And as we look at the 5,000 or greater invoices that are listed on the front page, most of these are kind of very familiar to us, and we keep seeing them. See that we have an additional payment for the asbestos abatement work of $294,246. Well, that project is obviously, but it's ongoing.
And other than that, I really don't find anything. I had a question on that front page. I do have a question though, dealing with some of the bills on the interior. That are less than the 5,000. And I know when we looking for alternate housing, we had a discussion, we knew we had to have a building for the county departments, which we got on Pickard Street. And we knew that the prosecuting attorney needed to have something more secure. And so we did budget a fund for that, but I noticed that we have payments to Charles Lux Funeral Home for rent for the county clerk. And I don't remember seeing the lease on that. I don't remember talking about it. And I didn't see it shame on me, I didn't see it when it came to my home. Otherwise, I'd have posed some questions earlier. But I know we have space on Pickard Street, and especially as we're looking to pass the millage, I'm not sure the optics of this is good to the county. I don't know if these have already been put out, but it's my intention that when we get to tonight's meeting, they're probably we'll put a motion on the floor, taking those out of approval until we have further discussion with the clerk Lux on that. Newspaper article that I read indicated that there would not be any rental costs for the fact that the clerk's office is at the Lux Funeral Home. I've gone there, it's a nice facility, but I think we have other departments that are in the Pickard Street. May not be the best for anybody, but it's one that we're paying for, and I'm not sure that we already should be ready to pay for additional. Any other questions on any of the bills or on any internals? I don't know, at this point, Flux, if you want to make a comment on this, or?
Yeah, the lease has already been looked over by the attorney and administration, and so now they're circling back and they're gonna blow it through with you guys. This is not county funds, this is the CPL fund that's been approved through by the state of Michigan. So administration has walked through us throughout this whole endeavor, so it's something Nicole's gonna bring back through to you guys.
Anybody else have questions or comments?
I will say I did have recent conversations with the county attorney on Friday, and we will be bringing that lease through the board. Mhm.
Okay, but it's one we have seen up to this point, so.
In the meantime, those payments are held and they will not go through AP. Mhm. I'm honestly, I'm a little surprised they're on the invoice list, but
Next list is the February 9th list. Take a look at it again. We have a quite large payment for construction of the correctional facility, the construction, making additional payments to Northern Analytical for air monitoring in the administration building. I don't see anything else there that I would have concern with. Anybody else have a comment either on those 5,000 or greater bills or any of the interior of that document? Hearing none, we'll go to the adjustment list. So the adjustment list modifies the two front invoice list, and it's payments that weren't identified on there, but we will make them only to get a discount for early payment or to avoid a late fee. Sometimes there's errors in entry of a few times there's an error in entry of the invoice when it goes to the administrator's office and that gets caught. But all of these, we have some payments to the community colleges, Gratiot Unified School District, and then just the second tax disbursement, so it's being done in a timely manner. These entities also require prompt payment of the taxes that we collect for them. Other than that, I don't have any questions on adjustments made to either one of the invoice lists. Hearing none, we'll move this then to tonight's meeting for approval. approval consideration.
Second item for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider approving the prime contract change order number 14 with Clark Construction in the net additional amount $14,564.
Good
Do we
evening.
have Heidi on?
Yeah, sorry.
Hi,
Took a
Sarah.
minute to
Hey,
bring my
Bob.
video up. Good evening, everybody. So like Commissioner Embry mentioned, our prime contract change order number 14 is a total add of $14,564. That is still coming from buyout. As somebody mentioned, I think it was Nicole. We do have an outstanding balance, which is the buyout as well as the contingency of $1,091,000. So we are doing pretty good on our contingency / buyout. The change orders or the request for change in this PCO is PCO 86, which is the sheriff requested to have some Wi-Fi pucks installed. This allows his cars to download data and information into the building. So they just drive up to the exterior in the employee parking lot or the Sally Port. And that extra cost then was $6,141. We had a couple field directives. We had some contractors. We had an area, some steel was kind of out of alignment in order for the metal panels to be plumb. So we had to add some hat track in order to make sure that that was adjusted. That cost went then back to the contractor, so it's no cost to the project. And that was PCO 88. We had one for repairing some concrete floors. We had some plumbing that we had to move after the concrete floor was poured. So we had to come in, saw cut that, and then our concrete contractor had to come back in and replace. So that cost then is not a cost to the project. That went back to the contractor, the plumbing contractor, William E. Walter. And then the last one is PCO 93, which is, I'm sorry, we have two more, 93. It was a staff toilet. We had to change the wall from an 8-inch block wall to a 12-inch block wall. That was to accommodate a carrier for plumbing for the toilet. And so with that change, it was $425 to Strauss Masonry. And then the last one was PCO 94. That one was CCD 20. That was a request from the township to have a redundant bypass at the RPZ. And that was an add of $7,998. That was a total then of $14,564 that came from buyout. Any questions on the PCCO?
Thank you very much, Ms. Heidi.
Um,
You did great.
Thank you. A quick update on schedule, if you like, real quick. So as Nicole mentioned, we are now just over 50%. And some key milestones that are coming up at the jail is that flooring in the kitchen is going to be starting mid-March. So we have an epoxy floor in there. So that'll be starting then. And then kitchen equipment will be starting the beginning of April. So all the new equipment will be coming in. I know Mr. Embry is very excited about that. We have already started painting in the offices. And the masonry block in area B, which is the booking area, it is now complete. So that's another big milestone for us there. We do have in the detention area, we have the catwalk, as the detention contractor, Paula Jail calls it, at the cells. That is going to be delivered next week. So that came fast. Yeah, we were told March, and we got word today that that'll be here next week. So things are really taking shape out there, and the trusses will be done here end of this week, first of next. That is kind of attached to those cells. So those are some key kind of milestones here that we're hitting, and I'm sure by the end of March here we'll be over 60%. So yeah.
They really come along, really started to take shape. So,
I know the sheriff mentioned something about a future change order that's gonna add to the buyout. I know probably it hasn't been finalized yet. Hopefully, the sheriff was right on the money mark, but something about change of materials and do you know anything about that?
Change of materials.
Well, we'll leave it to the sheriff to identify it. Go from
Okay,
there.
sounds good. I'll make sure to get a hold of the sheriff tomorrow.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you,
Thank
Heidi.
you. Have a good night.
You too.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll move this item for a regular board session this evening.
So the next item is consider adopting Isabella County fiscal year 2025 budget calendar as presented. So. Get you here. Madam Administrator, would you like to take that? I know you've expanded further, giving it time, in this very critical year. to Consider next year's budget, but would you like to take this, please?
Certainly, Commissioner. So we did expand the budget calendar yet even further for fiscal 25. If you notice at the top, directly following the presentation to the board, March 11th through the 22nd, we've put a time in there for admin to meet with departments to discuss the current fiscal 24 budget and any potential amendments that may or may not need to occur in the current year. This will depend heavily on the vote next week, and that will kind of lead the severity, I think, of those conversations. After those meetings, then admin will take that information and prepare the wage and benefit information for fiscal 25. That's usually the first step in the budget calendar. Admin works on that, but we want to make sure that we are meeting with departments first before we take a crack at the wages and benefit information. So it takes a couple weeks to do that, what's called position budgeting, if you will. And Melissa filters all of that wage and benefit information into the budget and then prepares budget packets for each department. And those are presented to the elected officials and departments at a budget meeting, budget workshop. We're suggesting April 12th. That would be ready for that. So that's kind of a new thing we haven't had before. Look at the current budget before we move on to the next. From the budget. So I'm sorry, did someone have a question?
Okay. Please continue.
Okay. From the budget workshop, then May 6th, we've got documents due from the departments. This will be the preliminary department requested budget. And we'll take some time then to meet again with department heads, elected officials to discuss what the budget recommendations will be from the administrator controller. The accounting prepares that department and requested budget, and that first draft goes out to the board really as is, right? That's the requested, what departments are asking for. It's always that really big, scary number, and we work down from there. That's intended to come to finance at your May 28th meeting. And then we've always done meetings as needed with departments after that point, but we do have a second round of meetings scheduled in early mid-June. We think that may be necessary. In June, if you recall, you only have one finance committee meeting on the schedule, and that's because the board has elected to cancel its first July board meeting, which you usually do. And so in essence, that cancels the finance meeting in conjunction with that. It's really tough timing for the budget process to be skipping that committee. So we have put in there somewhere late June, we probably need to schedule an additional finance committee discussion. If necessary, we think it will be. Accounting prepares the recommended budget early July, and then in July and August, several iterations come to finance, and those are always presented at the meeting. What comes out ahead of time is the recommended budget. I'll make the fiscal 25 budget presentation to the board at your second August meeting. And so in the packets for that meeting, so the Friday prior, you'll have that recommended budget. Then at that second meeting in August, you'll hear the presentation. And then we'll have the public hearing like we've done the last couple of years now at the first meeting in September. So that if there's any discussion or feedback, there's time to incorporate it into your adopted budget that would be adopted by law by that second meeting in September. It'll be here for you know it.
Thank you. I will say, I do want to thank my colleagues on the Finance Administration, Chairman Hope and Commissioner Embry, putting in a whole lot more hours as we dive deep into the county's budget and the cuts that we may have to make if the millage doesn't pass. And the additional hours on the building, it's just overwhelming this year. I haven't been able to get out to my family forest yet, and I've got 3 weeks of work out there yet, so. And I know that Chairman Hope, he doesn't get time off from the university, so when he gets all these hours, he has to make them up that evening or take personal time or vacation, so. I do commend everyone that's working on this and Administrator Frost. We really do appreciate your effort too. We don't see all the hours you're putting in behind the scenes, but there's a lot of work that's going on. And once we know the outcome of the budget, we'll be able to move forward, but we'll be prepared. Thank you for that, and thank you for the calendar.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Just want to add on appreciation to Madam Deputy.
Oh, yes.
Put in a tremendous amount of work, yes. It's been very helpful, so thank you.
I couldn't see you over there. Any other comments or questions on the calendar?
I would point out as you're later on in the meeting, you're going to consider your goal setting session. And I would just draw your attention to those dates in March on the budget calendar. And just kind of think about that goal setting session. And if you want that opportunity to hear feedback from departments at that March 11th through the 22nd timeframe, would you want that time frame before your goal setting, or would you rather have a goal setting prior to that? It's just kind of your preference. I think there might be an opportunity there to hear from them, or vice versa, for them to hear from you. I just want you to consider the budget calendar when you're thinking about that goal setting session.
I do know that if the millage goes down, I think we owe it to the public to come out with a preliminary list of adjustments to the future budget as soon as possible. And I see we're not looking until March 25th, so I had some concerns there, but other input from other members? We have preference?
There's later. Conversation with the department heads.
So-
Later for us to get together for a goal setting session based on this conversation with the department heads and elections.
So we take some action at a board meeting so that we can get a phase 1 out, but then understanding we're probably going to have phase 2 that hasn't been determined yet, which will get input at the goal setting session. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
Mhm.
So is that enough information to help schedule? Are you gonna get it?
Well, it'll be on your agenda later, so we'll find out. We'll find out soon. Find out soon. We do have, I will say, we did just schedule based on feedback at a recent department meeting. We did just schedule a meeting for 10 a.m. on February 28th with the department heads and elected officials. So that we can have some, immediate communication with them. But certainly, that plan, once it's solidified, needs to be rolled out internally, with due care, before it's released to the public.
We'll move this schedule to consideration for approval at tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
Final item is to consider approving the Spence Brothers proposal for professional construction management services for the Isabella County Administration Building rebuild project. And I believe we have there, Mr. Keeler. Brian Keeler with Spence Brothers. I suppose I can turn this over to you, kind of give us an idea of what you're proposing.
Well, good evening, commissioners and Administrative Frost. I appreciate this opportunity. We first heard about the project through your architect Spicer Group, who we've done a tremendous amount of work with over the years. And we kind of started talking about the opportunity to do a construction management delivery, which is similar to what you're doing on your correctional facility right now. There's a lot of benefits in delivering it with a CM approach, given you get some feedback from subcontractors and some help with estimating and just helping pull the project together with these given times with the construction industry and everybody's so busy. So we had a kickoff, an introductory meeting, just to understand a little bit more about the project and to develop a proposal to do a CM approach. So what you have in front of you is a traditional CM delivery, CM cost plus a fee, where we'll work with Spicer over the next 2 to 3 months, or as they're getting through the design. We'll start procuring some of the materials and long lead items early. We'll also help and work with your staff to help, I'll say, control the budget, to make sure we're staying within the limits of the boundaries of what we have available for us to put the building back together. So the goal is to manage the budget and expedite delivery so we can get butts back in the seats. That's the approach. And I guess if there's any questions in specifically, I'm here to answer those.
The only thing that I will like to say is that we're gonna need a bond to cover the cost of this project. It's money we don't have now, so it's another bond we have to take on. And I do appreciate getting a ballpark figure. And as soon as we can nail down maybe a more exact figure so that our administrator can proceed with moving forward with bond discovery process, that would be most appreciated.
Yep, we talked specifically about that right out of the gate. Let's try to understand what the building is going to look like when the abatement contractor's done, what's going to be left, and kind of what's our vision to put back in the space. So we'll help develop that right out of the gate, Jerry.
We're gonna have 3 floors and 4 walls each floor. If that helps.
Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Keeler, if I understand right, that construction management approach will help facilitate that early procurement of supplies and contractors, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner. With today's world, we're finding out that just air handlers or chillers, or I'll say cooling towers, or if you're looking at electrical gear, it's become more and more difficult to get in time for construction, especially on renovations when the building is there already. You need it much, much sooner in the whole construction process. Building new, sometimes you have that comfort of being able to order it and by the time you need it. But when you got a building that's ready for it right out of the gate, it becomes very important. So yes, early procurement with some of the suppliers, the long lead suppliers, but then also bringing on some subcontractors in the same way. So they're all busy right now, and we're going to become even more busy through the summer season with the schools. So we want to get ahead of that a little bit and lock in some of their resources to commit to this project.
Well, things are still happening in the construction industry.
Very much so.
Last comment from me. I think this is a great way to go, given the time constraint. We have less than a year left on our lease. If we go with any other route, we may find ourselves extending that lease into 2026. So I'm hoping that by investing in Spence Brothers, we can move this project along at a very quick pace, or as quick as possible, so that we can get ourselves back in the building. So again, Brian, appreciate your input on this and your interest in doing this, joining with us to make this happen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move this item to our session this evening. And that concludes business of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, commissioners, and that brings us to criminal justice and county affairs committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have one item that's considering authorizing the public defender to fill the position of misdemeanor level assistant public defender at a higher rate starting rate based on qualifications of the proposed hire. Public defender, Houseman here to explain.
Good afternoon. Made this request originally about a month and a half ago, and I feel like I had a really good speech then, so exactly what it was back then that I said, but we ended up tabling that because the full board wasn't here. We've had an open misdemeanor level assistant public defender position open since approximately September, when we had an attorney leave for another opportunity up north. Getting out of public defense altogether and then doing estate planning there. So we had this position available. And someone came to us, has 8 years of experience as a public defender, which probably put them at the top of our experience list in our office, being new department. And so qualifications of this individual, they warrant being able to bring them in ahead of the starting wage. I know that's difficult consideration right now, but I think it's important to note that this is already budgeted for due to that person that left was already at step 4 on the pay scale. And we're asking to bring this individual at that same level. So it's something we already budgeted that exact same age. It leaves us we're in an interesting predicament. We're in this window of time where this is a possibility for us. The way our budget works, that everyone remembers, is we have to submit our budget to the state in April. And so last year, April, submitting our fiscal year 24 budget, we provided the state, this is what we're going to pay this person. And so then when that person ends up leaving during the fiscal year, we still have that budgeted salary available. If we don't fill that position by the time that they have to resubmit our grant here coming up at the end of April, I presumably have to tell the state and only budget for that starting salary because we don't have a candidate, we don't have that filled debt. So there's possibility that I wouldn't be able to fill this position at this rate, or have to wait until the next fiscal year to fill it at the bottom starting salary, presumably with someone with no qualifications. So in this interesting window of time where this is a possibility for our office, it doesn't happen time. If we didn't fill it and I had to come back after the start of the fiscal year and say, hey, this person came to me with 8 years of experience, but we only budgeted for that starting salary because it was unfilled, then it's a different discussion. Then it's, am I taking that money from contractual services? Am I asking the board for that money? I'm not doing that. We have this money budgeted for this exact position. When I came here, like I said, last month, a month and a half ago, I know prosecuting attorney had emailed Ms. Frost in the middle of that meeting a letter of support for this request. The board approved his request for this exact same position to be able to negotiate within the entire pay scale. And the board approved that back in June. I know that position is still unfilled, but essentially we're asking to be treated the same in the position.
Yes, I'll make a comment on this. The state has made it very difficult to operate under these conditions, especially the new mandate came wages. So, like I said, it's in a very weird position. He has to get his budget in production. And because it's such a high percentage of what we get paid back as far as cost share, it's pretty hard to not put that in at this point to try to put that on pace. Questions?
I would, and I think it's a responsible thing to do if we're presented with a potential employee that is local person with high qualifications. We're not actually spending much more in even our benefits to get this person. These are the people that we really want to have in the county because we're invested in the area, that their experience and they work with us. You know, I'm sure that this person probably made more money, but I think the responsible thing for just very downsides and some of how their personal sits, I guess.
This previous attorney that we held that position, they were at a pay grade, was that correct?
Yeah, it was whatever the state pays, I think it's 4. They had been with us since the December of 2019. So this would be the same rate.
You're just replacing a position with another attorney in the same rate, so there's no additional real cost.
Correct.
Just asking to bring somebody in at the same rate that the previous attorney was being paid.
Precisely.
Any more questions? Seeing none, we'll move this to tonight's session. And Mr. Chairman, that is work with the Criminal Justice County Affairs Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you. Mr. Houston. And then bring us down to Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first item is in Galen. Letter shows for legal services regarding lake level board chairs. And we do have someone who's going to help.
Yes, I have, Amanda Knudsen and Luke O'Brien. Did I blow up that name?
You're pretty close. Like Bob said, I'm Amanda Knudsen. I'm an attorney with Fahey Schultz Burzik Rhodes. Myself, along with my colleague Stacey Hassong, represent the drain office and are helping out with respect to Isabella County's lake levels. We also represent the Michigan Association of County Drain Commissioners. So I see lake levels like this all over the state. And like Bob said, Luke O'Brien from Spicer Group is also with us today. He is an engineer working on the lake levels as well. And so I just have a super brief presentation. I worked with Nicole to cut out a significant amount because I know this was already presented to the committee last week. So I'll try to keep it brief, but also go over everything we need. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And so just to give a really quick overview of what I'd like to talk about, I'd like to quickly go over the general lake level concerns, the status of each of the Isabella County lake levels, the proposed resolutions that the board has for consideration tonight, and then some really brief next steps. Now, just a disclaimer, when I'm talking about these lakes, I'm going to refer to Part 307. And what I mean by that is Part 307 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. And that is the statute that governs lake levels in the state. It was actually recodified in 1994, and that's when the state put all of its environmental statutes into the same place. But we've actually had a lake level statute in the state in place since the early 1900s. And so when we're talking about these lake levels under Part 307, they're actually set by the county circuit court. So it's a really unique process. And then once they are set, the county board has the pleasure of having jurisdiction over these lake levels. And so we went over this in a lot more detail last week, but just to touch on the various concerns related to lake levels in general, There's a few boxes we like to see checked with respect to lake levels and their orders. And the first one is the legal lake level itself. And so that level that's in the court order should match the level, the physical level that's actually being maintained on the lake. And in a lot of cases, we see that there's a historical court order that actually has a different level than what has been maintained on the lake, you know, for the last 50 years. We also like to, while we're making updates to lake level orders, we like to use the most up-to-date survey datum. And Luke can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that a lot of orders use an older datum, and it's kind of like comparing inches to centimeters. Both datums get you to the same level, but they use different numbers. And so while we're updating everything else, might as well use the most recent datum. The next kind of box we like to see checked is with respect to seasonal levels. And so if a lake is drawn down in the winter, we like to see those seasonal levels and their effective dates shown in the court order. So that would be most times a summer level and a winter level. That ends up being really important because an eagle permit is required for a drawdown in most cases, with the exception of where seasonal levels are included in a court order and there are no adverse environmental impacts. The next box is variations, and you may have heard of the Higgins Lake Court of Appeals opinion. That's a recent case where the Court of Appeals held that a normal level has to be strictly maintained as it's written in the court order. And so that means that any variations have to be explicitly permitted in your court order. And as we know, we have weather, natural conditions, sometimes construction on lake level infrastructure, sometimes things like water banking or other operation intended to reach a legal lake level. And so any of those things require variation language to be included in the court order. Otherwise, this case holds that the county is responsible for maintaining the ordered level 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So the next item is a special assessment district. And special assessments are the funding mechanism under Part 307 to fund operation, inspections, repairs, these updates to the court orders, anything related to the legal lake levels. And this is really important because if there is not an accurate special assessment district in place for each lake, it's actually the county general fund that ends up being responsible for these costs. Lake level special assessment districts throughout the state are usually made up of properties that have what I call private legal access to the lake. And so that means properties that are either, lakefront directly abutting the lake or have access through like a plat or an easement or some other form of legal access, but aren't actually on the lake. The last box that we like to look at is ownership of lake level infrastructure. And so if the county has a legal lake level and is maintaining it, we like to make sure that the county also has the necessary property rights, whether that's owning the property where the dam or control structure is located or having easements in place over that infrastructure. And so Stacy mentioned this last week, but it's actually rare that we come in and find a county that checks all of these boxes. So Isabella is not unique in that sense. This has been a much bigger focus in the last few years since the Midland Dam failures and since that Higgins Lake case that I mentioned. And so before I go into each individual lake, does anyone have any questions just on lake level orders generally? Okay, so first off, we have
I have a question.
Yes.
Chris, every year, what was the mechanism that triggered this process that we're now involved in? What brought about the need to review our lake levels here in Isabella County? What was the mechanism?
And so Bob might actually be able to speak to that better than I can.
We have next item on the Joe, Wade and Mill Pond has issues and it's my duty to have all three of those dams that we have inspected every 3 years. When we found some problems with the Wade and when got investigating it, Stacy, or when I turned it in, went through all of our records on everything and we got some discrepancies, some problems fixed legally. And that's just the start of this.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, we often find it's more efficient for a county to review, you know, if we're gonna work on one lake level, we might as well update all of them at the same time. That generally ends up being the most efficient way to do it. All right, if there's no other questions, I think we can go into each individual lake. So we'll start with Stevenson, and I'm going to turn it over to Luke to talk about the control structure.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. So the photo there on the side of the screen is the Stevenson lake level control structure. It's a very simplistic structure, which isn't a bad thing. It was, my understanding is it was installed in the mid 1970s. And on the next slide, we'll go into some of the time frame of when the lake level was set. But it was put back at that time. The most recent dam inspection was done in December of 2022. And that inspection noted some minor things. Basically, the dam is getting to the point where it's nearing the end of its design life. There's some cracks and spalling noted on the concrete components, which will require monitoring in the future. As I mentioned, with the structure being pretty simplistic, the way that you access the hand crank to there's metal plates that act as stop logs to handle the 2 different lake levels, the summer and winter level. You walk out on the wooden planks and access the hand crank. Very simplistic design, but also lacking some of the safety standards of today's times. The inspection noted that wooden walkway is showing some signs of deterioration, so the boards would need to be replaced. And the overall recommendation of the inspection was to start thinking about significant repairs or replacement in the future. And so in order to do that, the first mechanism would be to make sure that your special assessment district is up to speed.
Questions?
And so in terms of the lake level order for Stevenson Lake, the normal level was initially established in 1974. It was updated in 1975, and then this lake level range was created in 1977. And this is a little bit unique in that we're not talking about seasonal levels. It actually just has a minimum level and a maximum level in the court order. And so there's no summer or winter levels currently in the order. There was a special assessment district referenced in one of the previous orders, but there's no map of that district attached to the order itself.
And one thing to
And
add
so-
about can I just add one thing, Amanda, about the lake levels and how the lake's currently being managed. My understanding is it's basically being handled with the winter level and the summer level. The lake is raised after Memorial Day, lowered, or before Memorial Day, lowered after Labor Day, which is slightly different than what the wording is in the lake level order.
Thanks, Luke. And that's really important just to reiterate. So we don't have language saying that there is a summer and winter level, but that's how the lake is being operated. And so it's important to update the order to make sure that reflects what's actually being done on the lake. And so these are kind of the needed updates. So like I just mentioned, we need to update the order to establish seasonal levels, make sure there's an accurate special assessment district in place, add variation language, and then make sure that the county has proper ownership or property rights over the lake level infrastructure. And so the resolution before the board today basically authorizes filing a petition in circuit court to make all of these updates to get the lake level order in shape. It also authorizes preparation of a special assessment roll, which would be once we get through the court hearing, we would have another hearing regarding the assessment methodology and special assessments. That would be a public hearing a ways down the road. And then authorizes making sure that we have all easement or property rights over the infrastructure. And that is all I have on Stevenson Lake. So if there are any questions, we can take those now.
I have a question. I know, looking at the dam failures in Gladwin and Midland counties, there's extensive damage, millions of dollars of damage done due to failure. And I guess I am concerned, I don't know if this goes into resolution, but who covers the insurance for a dam failure? Do we currently, as a county, if we own the structure, have adequate insurance to cover a failure in the future? I don't know if with the MMRMA, if we're covered right now or not.
So that's a great question, and Nicole can speak a little more to that, because I actually, our presentation for last week talked about insurance, but Nicole has since gone through the process of making sure the county does have MMRMA insurance on these structures.
That's exactly right. When these talks started a few weeks back, it triggered, hey, that same question. Attorney Stacy Hassan promptly forward the necessary documents that we sent to MMRMA. We now have coverage, Commissioner. You can sleep well tonight.
So we have coverage, are there limits to that coverage? And if there's a cost like a rider for a dam, is that something that gets passed on to the special assessment district to pay?
There was no additional costs. MMRMA let me know there was no additional cost to the coverage. I'm trying to look it up right now because I do think that there were some limits involved to that. I'm not sure how fast I can find that, but perhaps if Amanda continues, I will find it before the conversation's over. Oh, I have it right here. Okay. Oh no, this is a different thing. My apologies.
Well, I'll give Nicole some time and talk about Wademan Mill Pond while she's looking that up. And actually, I'm going to turn it back over to Luke to talk about the control structure on this one as well.
Yeah, so as Bob mentioned, this is the dam that got the conversation started. The inspection was most recently completed again in December of 2022, and there were some pretty significant issues that were found at that time. There is in the photo there, that's the primary spillway, which is on the south end of the mill pond. On the east side, there's an earthen embankment, and it was noted that there was some significant deterioration of that embankment. There was seepage with sediment transport along the downstream slope. So when the inspection was completed, water was found to be seeping through that embankment, and the indication of sediment transport is cloudy water. So if water is coming through and it's clear, usually that means it's okay. In this case, the water that was coming through was cloudy, which indicates that sediment is moving through. And in terms of an earthen embankment that's holding back water, that is not a good thing. There was also some other issues with the embankment. It has some extensive brush and tree growth on it. So Again, you don't really want to have trees growing on the embankment because if windstorm or something of that nature comes through, blows the tree over, it can create a void in your dam or embankment. There was also some inconsistencies with the height and the width, so the cross-sectional area of the embankment. And then there was some erosion noted on the inside slope of the embankment along the water line, typically created by waves. And then also there was some animal burrowing issues. So again, you don't want to have animal burrowing because then you can spring a leak through the embankment. So the conclusion of the inspection was that there's some significant work or reconstruction that needs to be done with that embankment. The last, big project that was done on the dam was done around 2000. I believe that's when work was done on the embankment last. So it's been approximately 25 years, and my guess is it hasn't really been maintained to keep the vegetation off. So the trees and brush have had that amount of time to grow. There's also some issues with ownership of that embankment. There's a couple of properties that are privately owned, and we don't believe the county has easement access for that embankment. And we had a meeting with the tribe, and we're starting to talk about possible funding, because my understanding is the tribe paid for that last project back in the year 2000.
And Luke, can you speak to the hazard of the dam and what that could mean for funding as well?
Yeah, so I should have mentioned this. So the Stevenson Lake Dam, that is a low hazard dam, which your hazard rating is based on the amount of risk involved, and risk is tied to potential loss of life. So if Stevenson Lake fails, potentially the road could wash out, but it's not holding back a large amount of water, and there's nothing really significant downstream of it that would be in danger. In this case, with the mill pond, that is a significant hazard dam. So there's multiple levels. High is the highest, and then significant would be one tier lower, which means there could be potential loss of life. And in the funding schemes that are available right now, Eagle has a grant that they've been issuing each year, and they've been issuing funds typically based on what the hazard rating of the dam is. The last few cycles have been the first rounds of this grant, and so far only high hazard dams have received funding, but we are hopeful that they will soon start having money available for significant hazard dams. So there's potential that we could apply for a grant on this one as well, the mill pond.
And just to summarize Luke's explanation, so we're looking at a couple of funding sources in addition to the special assessment district. The conversation so far with the tribe have been successful, is my understanding, and then we also may have this grant opportunity as well. And so for this one, the normal lake level was initially established in 1987. It was updated in 1998. And again, there's a special assessment district referenced in the 1987 order, but there is not actually a map of the district attached to the order. And this district, it's my understanding, has also never been assessed because the tribe paid for rebuilding the dam when that took place in the early 2000s. And so there were no costs assessed to the district at that time. So needed updates to this order include making sure that the legal levels in the order actually match what's being maintained on the lake. And again, updating the survey data while we're at it. Getting a good special assessment district in place and included in the order in the event that costs do need to be assessed. Adding variation language, and again, making sure that the county has adequate property rights over the lake level infrastructure. And so the resolution that the board has in front of them is very, very similar to Stevenson Lake. Again, it authorizes filing a petition in circuit court to make all of these updates to the lake level order. It authorizes preparing a special assessment rule. and then coordinating to make sure that all the necessary property rights are in place. And I did neglect to mention this when we talked about Stevenson Lake, but it's really important that the board passes these resolutions ASAP, because the resolutions are basically the starting point for when the district becomes responsible for costs. So even though, you know, we don't have a good district in place yet, if the county board passes these resolutions, they can assess all costs back to the district when it is established. And so if the county board waits, there's a chance that some of the interim costs may not be able to be assessed back to a special assessment district. Does anyone have any questions on Weidman before we move on?
I will just interject the insurance information before we move on from this. So MMRMA, our property and liability insurance carrier, they have their policy automatically covers the liability of these dams up to $1 million per occurrence, and the physical damage of the dams at actual cash value up to 15 million per occurrence. If we have an appraisal of the dam, they will cover it for replacement costs. Again, our premiums did not go up because this was added. Surprisingly enough.
If the mill pond dam would fail, and it's a high, has a high liability, if that exceeds the $1 million, would the county be on the hook for the remaining amount that might occur to homes and property downstream? Sounds like the limit's $1 million, might not be enough.
I feel like I don't know the answer to that. I feel like the homeowner's insurance would interject on their losses, especially since the county is doing everything it can in regards to the annual or every 3-year inspection, you know, that type of thing, as long as we're doing our part. Clearly, maintenance has not been performed on the berm. If we have large trees growing there for several years, someone has thought it was someone else's job to do, right? No one's been maintaining this. So we need to correct that going forward. That's, you know, part of why this is being addressed.
We don't even know if we have easement or.
That's why it's so important that we stick this and get this thing going. So we can get the access to the land and get the. We've got to see the.
I just think this is an example of essential things for people where they're at.
Yeah, I got a question for the commissioner here. A 2-part question on there. When you set up a special assessment for the mill pond, how far does that go in, considering that the Cowater River goes all the way to Cowater Lake?
Is that will be who benefits from our work, though. So the people in Cowater Lake don't benefit from the work. I mean,
from the work from the dam?
Yeah, it'll be the property owners around the mill pond. And if it was a drainage district, I could give you a definite answer, because it's all the water that the drain uses. This is a bit different. It's not, you know, this first one I've ever done. We only have 3 dams in this that I'm responsible for.
Second part is on Cowater River. Do you know if that's a requirement for flood insurance? I know parts of the Chippewa River is, but.
I would think they would look into it, yeah.
Okay, I just know that a couple of years ago, they upgraded a lot on the Chippewa, and a lot of people had to get flood insurance on that. I'm not sure on this, seemed like that would be.
But just so you guys all know what I've seen from what the berm is leaking, but I think what we had here is they cut a trench through there when they built the dam, and that's where they let the water, because this water that's leaking through is actually going into that county drain that I have on the other side of the road. And I think that's the way they let the water go while they were building the dam. And it was just, and it is, so, there, it is a leak there, but it's not anything, it's probably been leaking for a few years. And it's not a hazard yet.
Commissioner, will be speak to the process of how you're going to determine who is going to be put on those special assessment rolls, makes that determination and whatever.
There's a process that the and Spicer will help me out, but and it's a process.
It'll be your department that would make those calls.
Like I say, so a lake level one is totally different than what I'm used to. I can tell you how draining.
And I apologize. I'm having difficulty hearing some of this. So if I answer this incorrectly, I apologize. But I think the question was who ultimately makes the determination as to how the special assessment district is set up. And that's something where in coordination with the drain office, my office and Spicer Group would review the properties that have some kind of private legal access to the lake. So that means, again, the lakefront properties, but also properties that might have platted access or private easement access, have some way to access the lake. And we would put together a recommended district boundary, but that is ultimately subject to approval by the circuit court. And that is the entity that ultimately creates the special assessment district.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
I did look on the county's interactive GIS site, the map. Doesn't look like there's a lot of property owners built on. So I don't know what the cost would be, but that could be pretty expensive for those property owners. Just a thought in the back of my mind. I do have two other things. Littlefield Lake doesn't have a water control structure in it. About Lake Isabella, do we have any obligation for that dam?
That's what they're all looking into.
Okay, there is one thing I want to bring up that I think it's important for legal review, and that is, I believe the original agreement to construct that dam was between the Development Corporation and I think the county. But there was a requirement in that agreement that there'd be a safe portage provided around that dam. I've portaged around that dam myself once, when I was much younger, I'll put it at that. But there is not a safe portage. There's, at least to my knowledge, there isn't one now. And there's that whirlpool where they drain down. I'm just wondering if somebody would drown in that, if the county never acted on forcing that portage to be put in by the Development Corporation, if we could be held liable. That's something I think should be looked at. Somebody drowns there, we're probably going to be finding ourselves in a lawsuit.
That's something we would be happy to look into further.
Oh, we got another one. Like this. Sorry.
Any other presentations or actions?
I think there's more presentation. I think it's called.
Go ahead, Amanda.
You want to talk about Lake Isabella?
I'm sorry. I think my internet is bad and cutting out. So we do have a brief few more slides on Lake Isabella. I didn't include all of the background like the other lakes because, as I'm sure you've noticed, we don't have a resolution for the board to consider tonight. I will just preface this with saying Lake Isabella has an extremely unique lake level order, and I know Stacy, who has been practicing law for much longer than me, felt the same way. So some of the potential updates that I think the county may want to consider would be just like the other lakes, making sure that the legal levels match the levels that are actually being maintained on the lakes. Confirming the dates for the seasonal levels that are used on the lakes or the lake, and then adding variation language. The reason that we're not recommending a resolution yet, is because it's my understanding that the Property Owners Association and the village are both, extremely involved, with respect to this lake level. And so I think it would be premature to ask the board to pass a resolution prior to having conversations with them. And it may freak them out a little bit. And so our recommendation for Lake Isabella would be to start with a meeting between the county and the village and the Property Owners Association to discuss how the lake level is currently being operated and what updates may need to be made to the order.
Great idea.
And I would appreciate bringing up the portage issue, because I think that's very important for safety. There's a lot of canoeing on that river.
Absolutely. And so in terms of next steps, and these apply a little bit more to Stevenson Lake and Wademan at this point, we would ask the county board to approve our engagement letter and the resolutions before you. And I have another slide to go through those in a little bit more detail. And then after that, we would work with Spicer Group and the Drain Office to check the accuracy of the lake levels that are actually being maintained on the lakes, develop proposed special assessment district boundaries, and work on obtaining any easements or property rights needed. We've been very successful in other counties recently having some type of public webinar or meeting about these updates and the process. You know, a lot of people have never heard of illegal lake level and may live on the lake and not even know that it exists. And so we've put together some pretty good template materials that can be adapted for Isabella. And what that does is kind of gives landowners some information so that the first thing they see isn't a court hearing notice, which tends to make people nervous. So from a transparency aspect, I think the webinar or a public meeting of some sort is pretty important. And then we would, like I mentioned before, go to court and actually get these lake level orders updated as needed. And so I promise this is my last slide. There are 3 documents in front of the board members today to consider and hopefully approve. The first is just our standard engagement letter for Fahey Schultz Berzik roads. And so that is to just engage our office's legal services to assist Isabella County through this process. The other 2 documents are the Stevenson and Wademan Mill Pond resolutions, which again, those resolutions essentially authorize beginning the process to update the court orders, and then they start the clock for being able to assess back to a special assessment district. And with that, I think Luke and I are happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions at this time?
Thank you. And I say that we did get those presentations to all the other. And so what we'll do with the engagement next meeting is to approve that. And then the second part is resolution 2024-03 addressing Wademan Mill Lake. And we'll work on that this next meeting. And the third one is resolution 2024-04 addressing Stevenson Lake. And we'll deal with that also at the next meeting and continue the discussions that we had at this. Okay.
Very good.
And complete the.
Thank you, Luke.
And, yep, thank you, Luke and Amanda.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Director Willoughby, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any question? So that concludes the work of the community sources works committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, commissioners. Nice job. Right on to new business. Item A, consider scheduling a goal setting meeting of the board of commissioners for date to be determined and time to be determined 2024. And I don't know if the administrator controller talked about. In the budget calendar, she's meeting with the department heads March 11th through the 22nd. I don't know if we want to try and have our goal setting session prior to that or after that. Yes,
I know for myself, I think it's very important that we involve our department heads and electeds in this process, giving the significant nature of what we're getting into. We're talking millions, billions of dollars. And I think it behooves us to bring them into this process sooner than later before we do set our goals. Without their buy-in and without their expertise, this process is going to become very, very difficult, even more so than what it already is.
So, at those meetings, with department heads and electeds in the latter part of March is Easter. Take a look at April. Early in April.
They. The Easter doesn't. Or it's everyone be taking trips. Or it's because of God.
I didn't know.
I'm okay with late March.
Okay.
But if you need to go to April, I can do that.
Yeah, same here.
I think we need to do. Okay.
Yeah, I think as soon as possible, and almost immediately start having conversations with the department heads so that they have time, because they're the ones that need the time to start preparing themselves for these conversations. Comes to where they're going to be making the adjustments that they're going to have to make if this millage is not passed.
Late March, early April.
So if you look at late March, it's 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, which is Monday, Thursday.
So the 26th, we have some meetings. Right. Better or worse for me, but you know, it's good for me to just have separately meeting that. There's a goal setting meeting after that. You know,
Something after the last committee meeting.
yeah.
On support of that.
That's 26 after committee. Is that right for you, gentlemen?
I'll wait.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Anything else?
Little hard to hear on this end. Are you coming up with Tuesday, March 26th?
Yes.
In the afternoon or after?
Yes, after finance too.
Okay, make sure your clerk Lux and Michelle, are you available then as well?
I'll make myself available, but what time exact?
Well, I don't know if we can expect to do it after finance. 1 o'clock. Yeah, 1 o'clock. So that way we give ourselves plenty of time now.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Bring in lunch.
yeah.
Is it really available or where are we gonna hold it?
Good question. Okay.
Definitely bring to that thing.
If not, we've got other options, if this is not. Okay. Sounds good. So before we move on to item B, we're gonna go into a closed session. Before we do that, because we'll have to kick everybody out of the room. So I think we'll go ahead and do general public comments and then announcements. So if that's okay with the other commissioners. Sure. Okay, so we'll do that. First, we'll go to general public comment. So anyone wishes to speak for general public comment? When online, if you wish to speak, this would be the time to signify that, raise your hand or something.
Mr. Chairman, I do see a lot of new faces now. That. And if you function to our meeting structure.
Right, so this is an opportunity for general comment. We have general public comment again at the regular session. 7 o'clock. But anyone that wishes to speak now for general public comment, now's the time to do it. One more call. Anyone wish to speak for general public comment? Okay. Being no one, we'll move right on. Commissioners, any announcements? Commissioner Engler.
Yes, it's such a beautiful day out today. I'd like to remind everybody that the Conservation District's tree sale is going on. You can get the tree order going. The deadline is April 5th, so if you want to order trees, you can order them as well. Conservationdistrict.org Facebook page. Also, I'd like to remind everybody there's a couple of collection dates. Prior date for collection, and they'll be held at the Isabel County Fairgrounds, would be May 18th from 8 to noon, September 25th. There will also be a hazardous waste pickup electronic waste at June 8th and September 7th, same time, same.
Any other? I just have one. I would like to bring up that Bird Box is organized and they're conducting early voting at their location at 2320 South Mission from now through February 25th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And if you live in the city or Union Township, you can vote early at Powers Hall. CMU campus on South Washington, just north of Preston, just south of Bellows. They have parking right there next to the building. You can pull in on the north side of Powers Hall. There's signs all over campus. You can't miss it. Same hour, same time, February through the 25th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So we can vote there as well. I also want to point out that there is a new function on the county GIS system, thanks to our community development director, Tiffany. A little millage calculator where you can look up your property. And there's a little box that will put your taxable value right in there for you. And then you can type in the 2.5 mils to see what it'll cost you, what the increased cost will be for your particular property. The other one thing I want to mention is Council of Governments meet tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Isabella Township Hall in Rosebush, right on Rosebush Road. downtown Rosebush. Tomorrow at 7, and we will be speaking there about the millage request. That's all I have. Any other announcements? Seeing none, is there a motion to move into closed session?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before the motion to move into closed session, I just wanted to make sure that we're discussing insulin pricing litigation. Okay, litigation. I didn't see that word. So I will move to closed session under section 8E of the Open Meetings Act to discuss insulin pricing litigation.
Support.
Been moved and supported to consider entering into a closed session under section 8 of the Open Meetings Act to discuss insulin pricing litigation. Any further discussion of that? Seeing none, all those in favor, we need a roll call. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Swaney,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Embry,
Yeah.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner Hope.
Yes.
All ayes, Mr. Chairman, 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, Mr. Beam, I need you to dial, don't unmute yourself. You will be joining the closed session, but I need you to dial this number, 989 289 9041. Go ahead and call now. I'm opening the closing session or the closed session.
Then I wasn't supposed to leave the meeting.
Shall you need to unmute?
Yours now.
Here you go.
Okay, it's, Nicole's been moved and supported to adjourn the work session. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Adjourned at 7:52.
Rich 52?
Yeah, 6:52. Yeah, thank you.